April 6, 1945. 5 o'clock hours. East China Sea, 40 miles off Okinawa. The Yamato cuts through the pre-dawn mist like a steel leviathan, her hull slicing cold water, waves breaking in thunderous, white-capped crescents along her armored sides. Guns larger than small buildings point toward the horizon, black barrels glinting faintly under a gray sky. Deck crews move with tense precision, faces slick with salt spray and oil, boots clanging on steel plates. Somewhere deep below, engineers adjust valves and pumps, the hum of turbines echoing like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant, a heartbeat that will soon race. Smoke coils from the funnels, dark as night itself, trailing behind the ship in long, sinewy ribbons that twist in the wind. The Atlantic might have claimed many ships, but here in the Pacific, the Yamato stands supreme, the largest battleship ever constructed, a floating fortress, a symbol of Japan's industrial might and naval pride. You can almost hear the whispers of history in the air, a vessel that many in Tokyo called unsinkable. But out here, the sea is merciless, the sky indifferent, and the enemy unseen until it is already upon you. The crew, officers in crisp navy whites, petty officers in faded fatigues, enlisted sailors brushing down deck rails, move as a single organism. The captain, Vice Admiral Seiichi Ito, paces the bridge, binoculars pressed to his eyes, scanning for any hint of American carriers or reconnaissance planes. His face is a map of fatigue and resolve. The air smells of salt, sweat, and the faint tang of spent cordite from the previous day's training exercises. Below him, gunners load massive shells into the 460mm triple turrets. Each shell weighs more than a ton, its weight a brutal reminder of the ship's destructive potential. Hydraulic rams push them into barrels, and men sweat under the pressure of moving colossus-sized ordnance, while the sea tosses them like rag dolls. The Yamato is alive. Every deck plate vibrates with latent power. Every crew member knows their place in a symphony of mass and steel, each movement measured against a rhythm older than the war itself. Dawn breaks unevenly over the horizon, thin streaks of pink slicing through the gray. The water gleams with a metallic sheen. Spotters on the superstructure sweep the skies with binoculars and primitive radar, but in these hours before combat, the enemy remains a ghost. American pilots have been sighted far to the southeast, carriers hidden behind cloud banks and endless sea. The Yamato's intelligence officers confer quietly, maps spread over wet chart tables, colored markers denoting distances, headings, and potential interception zones. Orders are issued in clipped tones, repeated through ship-wide loudspeakers that echo across steel corridors, bouncing off bulkheads. Each sailor hears it differently. Some feel anticipation, others dread. Every heartbeat is synchronized with the ship itself. Below the main deck, engine rooms thrum with life. Turbines scream as the colossal engines push the ship forward at 24 knots, the fastest any vessel this size has ever achieved in open water. Steam hissed through pipes, condensers shudder, and valves hiss like angry snakes. The hull creaks under the pressure, groaning in protest, a sound both terrifying and magnificent. Crewmen cling to catwalks, checking gauges and lubricating pistons, aware that a single miscalculation could cripple the entire vessel. Yet confidence is rampant. They are aboard the Yamato. They are untouchable. At least, that is what they have been told. On deck, anti-aircraft gunners scan the low clouds, adjusting the sights of Type 96 25mm guns, tracking imaginary arcs through the sky. Drill manuals and diagrams litter the quarterdeck, the scribbled notes of officers predicting engagement patterns, all intended to prepare for the coming battle. Aircraft carriers, fast and lethal, are somewhere out there, but here, the Yamato is king. The wind whips at their jackets and hair, carrying with it the scent of diesel and the tang of sea spray, and somewhere in the distance, gulls circle, indifferent to the titanic war unfolding below. In the officers' mess, maps and aerial photographs are laid out with meticulous care. Ito traces routes with a polished pointer, highlighting potential approach vectors for the American fleet. His aides speak in hushed tones, aware that decisions made now could mean life or death for thousands of men. Every sailor on board understands the stakes. They have trained, drilled, and endured hardship beyond imagination. Yet despite the confidence in steel and firepower, a subtle unease drifts through the ship, a tension that cannot be quantified, a feeling that sheer size and armor may not be enough against a foe who has already rewritten the rules of naval warfare. The Yamato's radar picks up distant blips, small, barely discernible. Eyes peer skyward. The crew stiffens. Somewhere beyond the horizon, American Task Force 58 is moving into position, aircraft carriers unleashing waves of planes that the ship cannot yet see. Each sailor senses it before it is confirmed. This is not a drill. This is the moment history has been waiting for. From the bow, the morning light glances off the massive forward turrets, the 460mm guns pointed toward the unknown, gleaming, ready to spit fire that can tear through any ship in the world. The barrels are enormous, the largest ever mounted on a naval vessel. Below deck, shells await their moment. Every mechanism, every man, every ounce of steel and fuel is primed for confrontation. Yet, as the sun rises fully over the horizon, a small shadow flickers across the water, faint, almost imperceptible. And in that instant, the illusion of invincibility begins to tremble. Type continue to generate the next section. If you want, I can continue immediately with Section 2, maintaining exactly 900 words and escalating the tension toward the first American air strikes on the Yamato. April 6, 1945. 5:45 hours. East China Sea, 10 miles off Okinawa. The horizon begins to tremble with distant motion. Not waves, not clouds, but aircraft, faint silhouettes climbing into the pale morning sky. They are tiny, yet unmistakable. The first elements of the American Air Armada, Task Force 58's relentless strike force. Look closer, and you can see the glint of metal, the glimmer of wings, the tiny shadows racing over the water toward the Yamato. On the bridge, binoculars scratch across the rising sun, officers exchanging terse words. The tension is immediate, physical, palpable, like the charge in the air before a storm. Crews freeze mid-task, hands gripping railings, faces slick with sweat and sea spray, as the enormity of what is coming finally registers. The Leviathan they trust their lives to is about to be tested in a way no blueprint or manual can predict. From the starboard lookout, a young signalman squints into the distance, squinting through fogged lenses. He shouts a warning. The sound is barely audible over the hum of the engines, yet it slices across the deck like a blade. Enemy aircraft. Bearing 060. Altitude rising. The words ricochet through corridors and stairwells, reaching gunners, engineers, and officers in a wave of tension. Alarms wail across the decks, shrill tones designed to pierce the fog of panic. Sailors spring into action, running toward gun stations, adjusting optics, loading shells. Every movement is deliberate, drilled, yet the anticipation hangs heavier than steel. Somewhere in the distance, the ocean reflects tiny glints of sunlight off the approaching aircraft, almost like sparks before a firestorm. On the bridge, Vice Admiral Ito grips the railing, scanning the sky as radar reports flicker across screens. Fighter planes, dive bombers, and torpedo bombers are forming lines, invisible until they suddenly appear over the waves in tight formations. Their approach is clinical, precise, almost mechanical, a testament to the efficiency of American naval aviation. You can almost hear the hum of their engines merging into a single, menacing roar. Smoke begins to drift across the superstructure as the first of the Yamato's anti-aircraft gunners engage. The Type 96 25mm cannons vomit fire into the sky, tracers zigzagging toward the approaching jets. Sparks, smoke, and the smell of gunpowder fill the air. Men shout coordinates, warnings, encouragement, all while trying to calibrate massive weapons designed for ships, not planes. Below deck, engineers monitor turbine performance as the ship accelerates, attempting evasive maneuvers impossible for a vessel this size. Bulkheads vibrate with the strain of sudden turns, and steam hisses from overworked valves. The hum of machinery becomes a low, continuous roar, like the growl of a caged animal aware of its adversary. Every man knows, no armor, no size, no weight will matter if the air above them becomes a storm. And now, that storm is coming, silent at first, then sudden. A torpedo bomber swoops low, wings cutting the wind like knives. Its shadow races over the deck. Anti-aircraft guns fire desperately, but the bomber weaves, a human predator exploiting gaps no steel can cover. A single torpedo splashes into the water, trailing a deadly wake that races toward the Yamato's hull. The tension is unbearable, every sailor bracing for impact, every eye fixed on the advancing enemy. From the conning tower, officers shout adjustments. Port side. Elevate guns. Fire. Fire now. Each command echoes over the steel deck, bouncing off the hull and cascading into the crew below. Tracer fire arcs skyward, attempting to intercept incoming planes. Flak bursts ignite in the clouds, orange and white blossoms in the sky, but the sheer number of planes overwhelms even the most disciplined gunners. The deafening roar of engines, the rattle of anti-aircraft fire, the thundering of the Yamato's main guns as they rotate toward distant targets, it all combines into a symphony of chaos. And yet, in the midst of it, the crew moves with unnerving precision, each man a small cog in the gargantuan machine. The first impact. A torpedo strikes near the starboard side, creating a violent splash, a deafening roar, and a sudden lurch that throws men off balance. Deck plates shudder. Equipment rattles. Water sprays across the hull, soaking anyone in its path. Engineers below feel the shockwave reverberate through the bulkheads. For the first time, the concept of invincibility is fractured. Shouts of alarm mix with the smell of burning cordite and smoke from misfiring AA guns. Sailors stumble, regaining their footing as officers shout orders, directing firefighting crews to hatches, damage control teams to compromised compartments. The Yamato groans under its own weight, a sound that speaks of steel tested beyond its limits. Dive bombers begin their arcs. Streaks of silver dive toward the massive turrets, dropping bombs that shatter the air with concussive force. One hits the forward deck near turret number 1, sending shards of steel and concrete flying. The blast knocks men off their feet, fills the air with smoke, dust, and a choking metallic smell. The roar of the explosion drowns out the engines, the guns, the shouting. Officers rush to assess damage. Medics move toward the injured, but the sheer scale of the ship and the volume of incoming attacks make it impossible to react fast enough. The Yamato, the pride of a nation, is beginning to feel its first mortal wounds. From the superstructure, the captain watches, eyes wide, as the swarm intensifies. American planes, dozens at a time, sweep in low, coordinated, relentless. The ship's colossal guns attempt to track them, but speed and maneuverability are no match for the precision of modern naval aviation. Smoke curls across the deck. Fire alarms scream. Deckhands scramble to hoses and extinguishers. Water arcs in brilliant white streams, trying to suppress flames that leap higher than any man could hope to control. Every second stretches, elastic, terrifying. And in that second, somewhere deep in the engine room, a small explosion rocks the turbine chamber. Men are thrown off balance. Panic threatens to ripple. And yet the Yamato moves forward, pushing through the chaos, fighting with the only weapons it knows: size, armor, and firepower. But now, in the harsh glare of early morning, it becomes painfully clear. The Unsinkable ship is no longer untouchable. The enemy is here. And they have already rewritten the rules of engagement. April 7th, 1945. 6:10 hours. The horizon churns with motion. Waves break violently under the weight of approaching aircraft. The first of the American torpedo squadrons begins its descent, wings slicing the sky, shadows racing across the deck. Each plane a predator, each man aboard the Yamato a prey. The ship shudders as near misses send water cascading over the bulwarks, soaking sailors in a brine-laced spray. You can feel the vibrations through the soles of your boots, a low, relentless hum that seems to pulse in your chest. Officers bark orders over megaphones, the sound distorted by the roar of engines and the metallic groan of the superstructure. Below deck, the engine room is a furnace of heat and pressure. Steam hisses from pipes, valves hiss in protest, and engineers sweat under the strain of maintaining speed and maneuverability. Every second counts. The bridge reports incoming vectors, the gunners adjust, and yet the sheer volume of targets overwhelms even the most disciplined crew. Starboard. Starboard. Bring all guns to bear. Commands echo from the conning tower. Tracer fire arcs in tangled webs, bursting midair in jagged orange clouds. The Yamato's anti-aircraft batteries fire with mechanical precision, but each round is a gamble, a desperate attempt to thin the swarm. Dive bombers dive in synchronized arcs, wings glinting in the weak morning sun. The first bomb detonates on the aft deck, a massive explosion tearing steel and decking apart. Crewmen are thrown against bulkheads. Smoke fills the air, acrid and blinding. Men cough, shout, and continue their assigned tasks. Firefighters sprint with hoses, water streams lancing into flames that seem to devour everything in their path. Officers move with urgent precision, noting damage reports, sending men to reinforce bulkheads, patch leaks, and prepare for subsequent strikes. From the forward turrets, gunners rotate massive barrels, unleashing shells into the sky. The roar of 18.1-inch main guns shakes the decks, sending shockwaves through steel and flesh alike. One turret fires, tracking a dive bomber as it arcs downward, only to watch the plane dodge with terrifying agility, slipping through a gap of millimeters. Tracer rounds blaze past, illuminating smoke in the morning haze. The Yamato, designed to dominate surface combat, is now trying to fight the sky, and the rules have changed. Torpedo planes swoop low, barely skimming the waves. Their approach is methodical, nearly surgical, yet devastatingly fast. Each torpedo drops into the churning sea, creating plumes of water that surge toward the hull. The first strike hits port side near turret number 2, detonating in a violent spray that tears through plating, sending steel fragments into the air. Fire alarms scream. Men are knocked off their feet. Orders are shouted through smoke-filled corridors. The bridge assesses flooding. Engines strain. Bulkheads flex. The ship lurches, listing slightly, a reminder that even a vessel this massive is vulnerable. From the observation posts, lookouts report more incoming formations. F-4U Corsairs and SB-2C Helldivers approach in deadly synchrony. Pilots calculate speed, angle, and distance, exploiting every weakness of the gigantic battleship. Every second feels stretched to eternity, each movement a life-or-death calculation. You can see fear in the faces of deckhands and gunners alike, yet discipline holds them steady. The human will is tested against the unrelenting efficiency of mechanized warfare. Smoke and fire blur the horizon, creating a cinematic tableau of chaos and precision. The Yamato's superstructure is now a battlefield in miniature. Fire leaps from one deck to another. Shrapnel rains down. Men stumble over hoses and debris, still attempting to man their stations. Engineers in the engine room feel each impact through the bulkheads, the vibrations echoing like distant thunder. The main engines roar in defiance, attempting to outpace the coordinated strikes. But speed cannot save a ship this size. The bridge reports increased list and rising water in the aft compartments. Damage control teams move frantically, plugging holes, shoring up bulkheads with sandbags and steel plates. The human effort is monumental, yet it feels almost ceremonial against the tidal wave of enemy aircraft. Dive bombers increase in number, wings flashing in the sun. Each descent brings explosions, fire, and chaos. One bomb strikes near turret number 3, sending a shockwave that rattles the bridge. Officers cling to railings, shouting, gesturing, commanding. Sailors dive into trenches and hatches, yet some are trapped on exposed decks. Smoke thickens, obscuring visibility. The sound of anti-aircraft fire becomes a constant roar, punctuated by the explosions and the groan of stressed steel. The Yamato's decks are alive with fire, water, smoke, and the desperate will of its crew. From the conning tower, Vice Admiral Ito watches the coordinated strikes, a grim calculation in his eyes. The ship, though magnificent in scale, is being methodically dismantled. Air power has rewritten the rules of naval warfare. No superstructure, no armor, no size can withstand the precision of a fully committed air squadron. Yet the men of the Yamato continue, firing, maneuvering, and praying. Each strike, each lurch, each blast underscores the impossibility of their situation. The massive battleship groans under the punishment, a titan meeting of force it was never designed to counter. As the sun rises higher, the Yamato is surrounded by a swarm of aircraft, the horizon black with incoming planes. Torpedo planes, dive bombers, and fighters coordinate like a single organism, striking in waves designed to overwhelm. Explosions send plumes of water and steel fragments into the sky. Fire spreads along the decks. Smoke curls into twisting patterns, framing the human struggle against overwhelming odds. Every sailor knows. The next few minutes may decide life or death. Every breath, every heartbeat, every glance is charged with urgency and terror. Then a near-miss torpedo strikes starboard, tearing a new gash along the hull. Water floods in. Men slide across slick decks. Flames leap higher. The ship lurches violently, a subtle but unmistakable sign of catastrophic failure. Engineers shout warnings, gunners fire as if by instinct, officers try to maintain order, and sailors cling to anything solid. The Yamato's immense frame tilts under the onslaught, the culmination of hours of relentless attack. For the first time, the impossible begins to feel inevitable. April 7, 1945, 6:40 hours. Smoke thickens like a storm across the bridge, curling into the sky and staining the horizon gray. The Yamato lurches violently under the relentless assault of American torpedo bombers and dive bombers. The main deck trembles with every detonation. Water pours through jagged breaches, flooding compartments once thought invulnerable. Officers struggle to maintain order, bellowing into megaphones that barely rise above the cacophony. Sailors are thrown against railings, ladders, and each other. Hoses whip across the deck like serpents, sending water into the flames, but the fire feeds greedily on oil-soaked wood and twisted metal. On the aft deck, turret number 4 has been rendered inoperative. Flames lick at the magazine doors. Gunners kneel amid smoke, their eyes streaming from heat and sweat, firing sporadically at planes that seem to descend in endless numbers. One dive bomber swoops low, torpedo arcing toward the hull. The torpedo slams into the side with a deafening explosion, sending a column of seawater and debris skyward. Men are thrown over the rails into the brine below. Others scramble to throw sandbags into ruptured bulkheads. The screams of the wounded pierce the roar of engines and the shriek of anti-aircraft fire. From the bridge, Vice Admiral Ito observes the chaos with grim calculation. The Yamato's vast size once guaranteed dominance over surface combatants, but now the open sky dominates the battlefield. He watches the oncoming waves of planes, meticulously coordinated, striking with a precision that leaves no margin for error. Every anti-aircraft battery is firing until barrels glow red, yet the formation advances, as if guided by fate itself. The decks quiver with each near miss. The ship groans in protest. Steam whistles and alarms blend into a deafening symphony of mechanical defiance and human panic. Below deck, damage control parties fight a losing battle against incoming water. Engineers struggle to seal ruptures in steel bulkheads, working in darkness punctuated only by flickering lanterns and emergency lights. Flooding spreads with terrifying speed. Pumps groan and falter under strain. Crewmen shout instructions over the din of breaking steel and the rush of water. The heat is oppressive. Steam hisses from burst pipes, adding a choking mist to the smoke-filled corridors. Every moment carries the weight of potential disaster. One miscalculation and the engine rooms may flood entirely, dooming the vessel. On deck, men slip on wet steel. Fire spreads along secondary structures. Smoke thickens into choking curtains. Tracer rounds streak through the haze, illuminating faces contorted with effort, fear, and disbelief. The Yamato's deck crews continue to fire, even as the enemy planes adjust their approach angles. One torpedo bomber pulls up at the last second, releasing its payload almost point-blank. The torpedo detonates near the starboard side, ripping open a new gash. Water floods into adjacent compartments, sending men tumbling and forcing quick decisions under impossible conditions. The anti-aircraft batteries work frantically. 127mm and 25mm guns blaze in calculated arcs, trying to create zones of denial. Flares ignite the sky, briefly illuminating the inferno on deck. Sailors running, hoses spraying, fires climbing the superstructure. The sheer volume of attacks overwhelms even the most disciplined firing sequences. Explosions cascade like a chain reaction, each one magnifying the chaos. Smoke obscures vision. Debris rains down. Yet still, the Yamato moves, a battered giant trying to survive against overwhelming odds. Lieutenants relay damage reports. Officers calculate courses to avoid incoming torpedoes, but maneuverability is limited. The ship lists slightly starboard, then corrects under engine strain. Every blast reverberates through the hull, rattling the bulkheads and shaking men to their core. The roar of engines mingles with the crackle of gunfire, the screaming of the wounded, and the explosion of munitions. Below deck, crewmen brace against rising water, pumping furiously, knowing that any lapse could spell instant catastrophe. Above, the enemy aircraft adjust tactics. Dive bombers target weakened turrets. Torpedo planes strike at open hulls. The swarm seems inexhaustible, each plane a tiny missile of death, coordinating as though connected by a single mind. The Yamato's gunners fire with grim determination, but for every plane shot down, two more take its place. The bridge monitors the deck angles, the trajectory of shells, the rhythm of incoming attacks. Ito calculates, anticipates, and adapts, yet even his decades of experience cannot change the rules of this new air-dominated warfare. Men fall, some overboard, others trapped by collapsing superstructures. Fires rage, smoke engulfs the decks, and explosions continue to echo across the steel landscape. The human cost becomes visible in every face: exhaustion, fear, resolve, and despair etched into the eyes of sailors trying to survive the impossible. Yet orders continue. Officers move amid flames and smoke, pointing, shouting, attempting to impose discipline on chaos. The Yamato, once the pride of the Imperial Japanese Navy, has become a crucible of human endurance and mechanical vulnerability. Then, amid the chaos, a torpedo hits near the bow, sending a shockwave through the decks. Men are hurled sideways. Flooding spreads faster than ever. Alarms scream. The bridge shakes violently. Smoke rises from ruptured compartments below. Officers yell, trying to maintain command, but visibility is near zero. On deck, sailors struggle to hold hoses, extinguish fires, and rescue comrades. Every movement feels monumental. Every decision could mean life or death. The Yamato, a titan built to dominate oceans, is now a vessel in flames, listing under the relentless, coordinated fury of American air power. Across the superstructure, fires spread uncontrollably. Smoke twists in the sky, creating a cinematic tableau of destruction and human courage. The bridge reports additional flooding, engines strain to compensate, and the ship groans under the cumulative punishment. The anti-aircraft batteries are still firing, yet the swarm of planes adapts, striking weak points with surgical precision. The enormity of the situation settles into every corner of the ship. Ito's face is stoic, but the weight of inevitability presses down. And then, as the Yamato heaves and lists under another series of torpedo hits, a deafening explosion from near the aft magazine shakes the entire vessel. Bulkheads buckle. Water surges uncontrollably. Flames erupt across decks. Men are thrown to the steel floor, some clinging desperately to anything solid. Smoke blinds. Screams echo. The impossible, long-feared moment begins to unfold. The ship is now teetering on the edge between life and annihilation. April 7, 1945. 7:05 hours. The Yamato groans under the cumulative force of explosions, torpedoes, and relentless aerial assault. Smoke now rises in thick, suffocating clouds, swallowing the once pristine superstructure. The decks are a nightmare of fire, twisted steel, and debris. Sailors cling to railings or dive into water where torpedoes have torn open the hull. The once mighty battleship shudders as if alive, shivering under the punishment of coordinated American air power. Every compartment tells a story of human struggle, every corridor echoes with panic, and every deck is a battlefield of survival. On the bridge, Vice Admiral Seiichi Ito maintains a stoic facade, issuing commands through the cacophony of alarms, explosions, and desperate voices. His words are precise, clipped, a lifeline to crewmen struggling amid chaos. Officers relay damage reports with urgency. Engines are faltering, compartments flooding, fires spreading to previously stable sectors. Anti-aircraft gunners fire with determination, yet the sheer scale of the attack overwhelms human endurance. Each enemy plane that strikes adds weight to an already collapsing structure. In the aft turrets, men fire with grim resolve. Turret number 3 is partially operational, its gunners determined to repel attackers despite scorching heat and smoke. Flames lick at the armor, sparks shower across the deck as metal twists under stress. The roar of 127mm guns blends with the scream of incoming aircraft. Torpedo bombers weave through the chaos, releasing deadly payloads, while dive bombers streak downward, dropping bombs into vulnerable decks. The Yamato's anti-aircraft fire scores hits, yet cannot stem the tide. Smoke and fire obscure vision, making every engagement a blind fight, a lethal guessing game. Below deck, water surges with terrifying speed. Flooding threatens the engine rooms, the magazine, and living quarters. Damage control parties race to seal bulkheads, but the ferocity of the attacks renders many efforts futile. Steam hisses from burst pipes, adding to smoke-filled corridors. A crewman shoves sandbags into gaps, brace doors against pressure, and redirect pumps, knowing that one misstep could doom hundreds. The smell of oil, burning wood, and seawater mixes with human fear, a pungent reminder of mortality amid mechanical failure. Along the starboard deck, sailors attempt to drag hoses through pools of water, slipping and being pulled down by currents rushing through breached compartments. Fires spread to lifeboats and secondary structures. Every movement is an exertion of pure will. Shouts of officers cut through the roar of battle, attempting to restore order, though the ship's massive scale makes control nearly impossible. Exhaustion is everywhere. Faces streaked with soot, eyes red from smoke, hands raw from gripping hoses and equipment. Planes continue their coordinated assault. Each torpedo hit or bomb detonation sets off secondary explosions. Flak shells streak upward in desperate arcs, creating intermittent flashes that illuminate the chaos in stark relief. Sailors duck, roll, or dive, narrowly avoiding fragments of metal and timber raining from the superstructure. The deck twists and heaves as if the Yamato itself is convulsing, each movement a response to the unrelenting punishment from the air. The battle has become less about naval supremacy and more about survival. In the central deck passageways, medics struggle to treat the wounded. Blood, soot, and water mix into a gritty, suffocating sludge. Shouts and cries echo through steel corridors. Sailors lie trapped beneath twisted machinery. Some are conscious, others moaning from shock. There is no respite. Fires crackle above, torpedo hits send vibrations through walls, and smoke curls into every corner. Every second is a choice between action and inaction, life and death, and the human toll mounts with horrifying speed. The aft magazine, already weakened by prior hits, begins to groan under pressure. Ito and senior officers anticipate catastrophe but cling to command. Turret crews continue to fire, despite fires creeping along ammunition lockers. Smoke obscures the scene, but the smell of burning cordite and gunpowder is unmistakable. Every explosion from above and below resonates through steel and flesh alike. Sailors brace for impact, some praying silently, others screaming curses or encouragement to comrades. The human struggle is raw, unfiltered, and unrelenting. On the main deck, waves crash over the side as the ship lists further. Torpedo impacts have left massive breaches and seawater surges in with every swell. Firefighters battle to contain spreading flames while waves of enemy aircraft coordinate new angles of attack. The sky is a choreography of destruction. Dive bombers diving, torpedo bombers weaving, anti-aircraft fire blazing, smoke twisting, and debris raining down. The Yamato, colossal yet fragile in this new era of warfare, shudders at the limits of endurance. Vice Admiral Ito moves among officers, issuing orders with precision. Even amid chaos, the chain of command holds moments of clarity. But the magnitude of the assault leaves little room for mitigation. Fires, flooding, and direct hits converge toward a singular conclusion. Engineers relay that the starboard hull has taken irreparable damage. Propulsion is failing. Decks sag. Men are being forced into life-or-death improvisation with every heartbeat. The Yamato is no longer a battleship. It is a crucible, testing courage, endurance, and human resolve against overwhelming force. Then, as another torpedo strikes near the aft magazine, a deafening shockwave ripples through the entire vessel. Steel shrieks, bulkheads twist, and smoke and fire erupt into a towering inferno. Sailors are thrown violently, many overboard. Fires spread uncontrollably, flames consuming wood, oil, and ammunition. The deck is now a chaotic mosaic of destruction. Anti-aircraft guns continue to fire in futile resistance. From the bridge, Ito witnesses the final moments with grim resignation. The Yamato, once the pride and glory of the Imperial Japanese Navy, is teetering on the edge of obliteration. Amid the maelstrom, individual acts of courage shine in stark contrast to the ship's collapse. Sailors drag comrades to safety, fight fires amid explosions, and brace against water surging through gaping holes. The human element, the courage, fear, and sheer will, is the only anchor in a sea of destruction. Smoke, fire, and water blend into a cinematic tableau of finality. Each explosion, each gust of wind, each crashing wave draws the Yamato closer to its inevitable fate. The ship groans one final, monumental time. April 7th, 1945. 7:45 hours. The Yamato is a crucible of fire and smoke. Decks are molten chaos. Flames roar along the superstructure, licking at railings and antennae. Sailors stumble through blinding clouds of smoke, coughing, eyes stinging, every breath a fight against choking fumes. The once imposing battleship now resembles a floating inferno, a colossus of steel bending under the relentless precision of American air power. Torpedo hits have ruptured the hull below the waterline and seawater surges into compartments at terrifying velocity. The ship's list increases, a slow, insidious tilt that threatens to drag everything and everyone into the sea. From the bridge, Vice Admiral Seiichi Ito continues to issue commands, though his voice is nearly drowned by the cacophony. Officers shout responses, relaying damage reports, maneuvering orders, and evacuation directives. The Yamato shudders violently under each successive strike. Fire spreads to the aft magazines, igniting secondary explosions that reverberate across the ship like rolling thunder. The hull groans, rivets popping and screaming under stress. Crewmen cling to bulkheads or scramble for open deck space as heat sears through clothing and flesh. The smell of burning oil, cordite, and charred steel saturates the air, an olfactory signature of war itself. Turret number 2 continues to fire sporadically. Gunners are half-blind from smoke and sweat, faces streaked with soot. Ammunition feeds are disrupted by twisting metal and flames, but determination drives them forward. Dive bombers streak overhead, screaming downwards in precise, lethal arcs. Anti-aircraft fire erupts in staccato bursts, flak shells exploding in clouds of smoke and sparks. Despite heroic efforts, planes slip through defenses with terrifying regularity, releasing bombs that tear open decks, ignite fires, and hurl sailors overboard. The human cost is staggering: hands, faces, and bodies scorched, bruised, and broken. Yet the will to fight persists. Below decks, chaos is absolute. Flooding compartments force sailors into submerged corridors, wading through chest-deep water while clutching ropes, pipes, or each other. Steam hisses from ruptured boilers, scalding and burning those who pass. Fires race through living quarters and officer cabins, consuming everything in their path. Medics and damage control parties are overwhelmed. They drag wounded sailors through smoke-choked passageways, performing makeshift treatments while the ship quakes under successive detonations. Every bulkhead threatened by flooding or fire is a ticking countdown to catastrophe. The Yamato's interior resembles a living hell where steel, water, and flame conspire against human endurance. On the main deck, waves crash violently over the sides, sweeping debris, equipment, and men into the sea. Sailors cling to anything that might keep them from being pulled under. Lifeboats have been destroyed or consumed by fire. Water mixes with fuel, smoke, and ash, creating a choking slurry of chaos. The roar of dive bombers is constant, a high-pitched scream above the deeper, rolling detonations of torpedoes and internal explosions. Visibility is near zero. Every step is a hazard. Every movement might be the last. The Yamato's once formidable superstructure is now skeletal, blackened steel framing silhouetted against towering plumes of smoke. In the control rooms, engineers and officers fight a losing battle against fire and flooding. Pumps fail, valves rupture, and electricity sparks in erratic arcs. Temperatures soar, metal expands, and the hull groans under the pressure. Crewmen improvise, redirecting water, blocking flames with wet blankets, and attempting to stabilize engines. Every second is a race against forces beyond human control. The Yamato is no longer merely a ship. It has become a vast, collapsing mechanism of destruction, threatening to consume everyone on board. Sailors trapped near the aft magazine face the worst of the inferno. Heat is unbearable. Flames leap from bulkhead to bulkhead. Explosions rattle the ship, throwing men against walls and floors. One torpedo impact sends a fireball upward, engulfing a section of the deck in an instant. The shockwave throws several overboard. Others are pinned beneath equipment or railings. Smoke obscures everything, turning the deck into a surreal battlefield where shapes twist and warp in the fiery haze. Courage is tested not in calm moments, but in the heat of immediate survival. Above, aircraft continue their coordinated assault. Torpedo planes weave through flak, dive bombers streak down in perfect arcs, and each strike adds layers to the Yamato's slow destruction. Explosions send shrapnel raining over sailors, metal twisting and groaning under stress. Officers call for fire suppression teams, medics, and damage control parties, but the scale of destruction renders many efforts futile. The human struggle continues, even as the structure itself begins to fail. Every sailor becomes both participant and observer, a witness to the collapse of a national icon. Vice Admiral Ito moves through smoke-filled corridors, attempting to maintain order. He directs firefighting efforts, evacuation protocols, and morale reinforcement. Yet everywhere he looks, the human and mechanical systems are strained beyond endurance. Fires erupt in rapid succession, flooding surges through breached compartments, and the Yamato's tilt worsens. Every corridor, every bulkhead, every turret is now a theater of raw desperation. The ship has lost the luxury of being a cohesive unit. It is fragments, people, and fire in violent, terrifying motion. Then, at 8:15 hours, a massive explosion rips through the aft magazine. The detonation is cataclysmic, sending a fireball hundreds of feet into the air. Decks twist, bulkheads buckle, and steel is torn asunder. Sailors are thrown violently into the sea. The force is felt throughout the ship. Anti-aircraft guns are obliterated, fires spread uncontrollably, and flooding accelerates. The Yamato lurches violently to port. Water surges over the deck, sweeping away anything not firmly anchored. The ship, once unsinkable, begins its final descent. Amid the inferno, individual acts of bravery persist. Sailors help wounded comrades into life rafts, carry fire hoses through collapsing decks, and struggle to maintain the chain of command. Every act is heroic against impossible odds, every decision a choice between life and death. The human story is stark and raw, courage, fear, and endurance juxtaposed against overwhelming technological power. The Yamato, colossal and proud, is now reduced to chaos and ruin, a vessel transformed from symbol to cautionary tale. April 7, 1945. 8:20 hours. The Yamato is a tormented giant, staggering through the waves with a lopsided roll, her aft submerged in dark, churning water. Smoke billows from the superstructure in black, acrid clouds that obscure the rising sun. The roar of distant engines mixes with the constant drumming of explosions. The sea around her is littered with debris, life rafts, twisted metal, and the bodies of sailors swept overboard by the violent surge. The smell of burning oil and cordite is overwhelming. Every wave threatens to claim more men, every shudder of the hull a reminder of how fragile even the mightiest of ships can be. Vice Admiral Seiichi Ito moves along the bridge, eyes fixed on the horizon, issuing orders with grim precision. His voice cracks under the pressure of unending chaos, but discipline is all that stands between order and total collapse. Communications officers shout updates from broken radios, flares signal distress to nearby escorts, but their own ships are limited in what they can do. Anti-aircraft gunners, many wounded, continue firing at dive bombers streaking through the black smoke. Each shell fired is an act of defiance, a last-ditch resistance against overwhelming air power. Yet with every pass, enemy planes seem to anticipate the gun crews, threading the flak with deadly precision. On the deck, sailors cling to railings or twisted steel. Their faces are streaked with soot and blood. Some are burned, others are bruised or broken from falling debris. Still, they fight to save what they can, fellow crewmen flailing in the water, hoses and pumps to slow flooding, and ammunition to keep what few turrets remain operational. One sailor drags a wounded comrade toward the bow, through smoke and fire, dodging ruptured steel plates and flame jets. Around them, the Yamato moans like a living creature in pain, her hull groaning under stress, every bulkhead a potential death trap. Torpedoes strike again, ripping into the port side. The sound is deafening, a metallic scream followed by the hiss of water flooding in. Compartment after compartment succumbs to the deluge. Decks are slick with seawater and fuel. Sailors slide, stumble, and fight to keep their footing, pulling hoses through twisting, collapsing corridors. Fires erupt in unpredictable places, and smoke chokes everything in thick, black tendrils. Through it all, the Yamato remains upright for a moment longer, a monument to stubbornness and steel. But even steel has its limits, and gravity, fire, and water are relentless enemies. From the aft, explosions begin to tear apart the remaining superstructure. Turrets twist, barrels point skyward or sink into the deck. Crewmen operating the remaining guns are engulfed by flame and smoke, yet some continue to fire, their resolve undiminished by the hopelessness around them. The Yamato's forward guns respond with sporadic fire, the massive booms echoing across the waves, shaking the surrounding water. Every shot is an act of defiance, a final attempt to assert dominance in a battle already lost. Above, enemy aircraft adjust their formations, diving in precision attacks that exploit every weakness, every exposed section of steel. Below decks, chaos is absolute. Flooding is unstoppable, fire spreads in every direction, and explosions continue in rapid succession. Sailors attempt to save as many comrades as possible, dragging them through submerged corridors and smoke-filled stairwells. The air is near unbreathable, thick with steam, ash, and the acrid scent of scorched metal. Yet despite the terror, the human instinct to survive drives desperate, heroic action. Makeshift stretchers are created from boards and tarps. Ropes are thrown to sailors clinging to railings or floating debris. Every movement is a gamble, every breath a small victory. Vice Admiral Ito orders the last of the crew to abandon ship. Life jackets are distributed where possible, Ropes are thrown overboard. Sailors leap into the sea, swallowed immediately by waves, smoke, and fire. The Yamato tilts more sharply, the deck now almost vertical aft. Sections of the superstructure collapse, sending debris and burning wreckage cascading into the water. The screams of men lost in the maelstrom mix with the roar of explosions and the crash of waves, creating a soundscape that is both chaotic and mournful. In the final moments, the ship is unrecognizable. The bow, still cutting through the water, is almost vertical as the stern plunges into the depths. Smoke, fire, and steam engulf everything. Sailors in the water cling to anything floating: rafts, crates, beams of twisted steel. The Yamato groans in one final convulsion before she begins her ultimate descent. Air bubbles burst on the surface as compartments collapse, and a tremendous roar erupts as the hull splits. The battleship, once the pride of Japan, begins to sink at a terrifying angle. The scale of destruction is monumental, an entire warship, a symbol of national might, swallowed by the sea in minutes. Above, the American aircraft maintain their circling formations, scanning for any remaining targets. Pilots report a total of 300 planes involved in the attack, a coordinated effort combining dive bombers and torpedo planes. The scale of the operation is immense, the precision nearly surgical. Every maneuver, every strike, ensures that the Yamato will not rise again. Even as she disappears beneath the waves, her legacy as a symbol of both ambition and hubris remains indelible. The sea calms only slightly after the Yamato disappears beneath the waves. Life rafts float amid debris, smoke still rising from pockets of burning fuel. Survivors cling desperately, exhausted, bleeding, and traumatized. Some gaze at the sinking point in disbelief, the enormity of the loss etched into every expression. Officers and sailors who remain together form small groups, helping one another, sharing what little comfort they can. The water is cold, the wind biting, and the sense of finality almost unbearable. The pride of Japan lies beneath them, a sunken monument to the limits of steel, strategy, and human courage. In that moment, you understand the scale of transformation in naval warfare. The era of the battleship, massive, impervious, revered, is over. Aircraft and agility dictate victory, not size or armor. The Yamato's demise is both tragic and instructive. Even the most formidable creation cannot withstand the relentless evolution of technology and tactics. For the sailors, officers, and the world watching, the sunken Yamato becomes a testament to bravery, hubris, and the unstoppable tide of change in war. April 7, 1945. Hours after the Yamato's final plunge, the ocean is a vast graveyard of fire-scorched debris, floating lifeboats, and the remnants of a prideful empire's ambition. The sun, weak behind a layer of gray clouds, reflects off the water in dull glimmers, highlighting the scattered wreckage that drifts aimlessly. The survivors, exhausted, shivering, and in shock, cling to whatever will float. Waves slap against them, icy and relentless, carrying both the tangible debris and the invisible weight of loss. In this stillness, broken only by distant planes and the occasional shouts, the human cost of hubris is writ large. Small groups of sailors huddle together, faces streaked with soot, blood, and seawater. Some tend to wounds, others silently count the bodies they see drifting, numbers too high to fully comprehend. A few mutter prayers, hands trembling, while others remain numb, staring into the void. Officers try to maintain some semblance of order, organizing survivors onto rafts, encouraging them to cling together, rationing the few flares left to signal nearby vessels. The horror of what they witnessed, the sheer scale of destruction, the magnitude of human loss, presses on every mind. Each wave feels like a reminder that even survival is a fragile, fleeting gift. Rescue operations begin in fits and starts. Destroyers and escort ships comb the area, taking on survivors wherever they can, but the chaos is immense. The remaining air cover is cautious, wary of lurking enemy aircraft, while the currents disperse the scattered survivors. Those rescued are pulled aboard wet, shivering, silent, eyes hollow with trauma. Medical personnel work furiously, stabilizing the wounded, amputating shattered limbs, administering morphine, and attempting to warm those at the edge of hypothermia. Yet even with aid, the death toll continues to climb. Many succumb to exposure, shock, or injuries too severe to treat in time. In Japan, news of the Yamato's destruction arrives with shock and disbelief. Reports describe a ship once deemed unsinkable, vanishing beneath the waves after a single, coordinated strike by hundreds of aircraft. Newspapers attempt to frame the loss with nationalistic rhetoric, emphasizing heroism and sacrifice, but the scale of failure is undeniable. Families learn of fathers, sons, and brothers lost in an instant, thousands of miles from home. Letters of condolence and the silent weight of grief pervade the nation, intertwining personal sorrow with collective disillusionment. The myth of naval invincibility, nurtured for decades, is shattered in a matter of hours. Historians later analyze the Yamato's final mission with clinical detail. The ship, built for the age of battleships, faced a world transformed by speed, mobility, and air power. Tactical doctrine, once reliant on armor, firepower, and sheer scale, had become obsolete in the face of coordinated air assaults. The Yamato's armor, thick enough to withstand torpedoes and shell fire from other capital ships, proved vulnerable to aerial torpedoes and dive-bombing attacks delivered by hundreds of small, agile planes. Its size, a symbol of might, became a liability, an immobile target for a well-planned, technologically advanced strike. Yet, beyond strategy and technology, the Yamato's story is fundamentally human. The sailors, officers, and commanders exhibited courage under circumstances designed to break men. They operated massive guns with precision, despite injuries and fire, fought flooding and collapsing decks, and obeyed orders while death surrounded them. In these acts, bravery and tragedy are inseparable. The men's skill and valor could not alter fate, but they rendered the disaster profoundly human. Accounts of last messages, whispered prayers, and final commands give texture to what might otherwise be a sterile historical statistic. The Yamato's sinking also signals the broader shift in naval doctrine. The era of the battleship, the floating fortress, the centerpiece of national pride, is definitively over. Aircraft carriers and coordinated air power now dominate naval engagements, their ability to project force over long distances rendering traditional gun-based ships nearly obsolete. The ocean itself, once a domain of giants, becomes a theater defined by agility, surveillance, and rapid, precise strikes. Naval engineers and strategists draw lessons from the Yamato, recognizing that scale cannot compensate for flexibility and that even the mightiest constructions are vulnerable to innovation. Survivors of the Yamato, carried back to Japan in clusters aboard escort vessels, return to a nation still at war. Their experiences are initially classified, tightly controlled to preserve morale, yet over time, testimonies emerge, memoirs are written, and the full scale of the disaster becomes part of historical record. These accounts reveal not only the tactical failure, but the human endurance, the decisions, the courage, and the despair that define one of the last great naval battleship's final hours. Each narrative preserves the tension, fear, and heroism, ensuring that the Yamato remains more than metal and guns. It becomes a symbol, a story of ambition, error, and sacrifice. In museums, archives, and documentaries, the Yamato is remembered visually and textually. Photographs of towering guns now rusting on display, diagrams of its compartments, film footage of its final mission. The battleship scale, ambition, and destruction continue to evoke awe. Visitors walk the decks of surviving sister ships or examine models, imagining the lives that intersected with steel, fire, and the ocean. Through these stories, the Yamato transcends its physical existence, embodying lessons about technology, strategy, and the human cost of warfare. Ultimately, the Yamato's demise is both an end and a beginning. It marks the death of an era and the rise of a new mode of naval warfare dominated by air power. It reminds us of the limits of engineering against tactical evolution and the peril of pride against relentless change. And, most poignantly, it honors the courage of those who faced an inevitable fate with skill, discipline, and resolve. In the cold, empty expanse of the East China Sea, where smoke once rose and steel screamed, the legacy of the Yamato lies not beneath the waves alone, but in every lesson learned, every story told, and every memory of those who gave everything in her final stand.